My mother's voice sliced through the babble of the reception, ringing out with the kind of effortless confidence she always seemed to have at family gatherings. Her smile was dazzling, almost theatrical, bright enough to make people turn and look. She lifted her glass high. To Grace, the one who made this magical day happen. I couldn't have done it without you. The words seemed to float in the air, sharp and impossible to ignore. I felt them land, heavy, somewhere inside me. My chest tightened so much it was hard to breathe. Around me, the room erupted in applause and laughter. People cheered, clinking glasses, their faces glowing with the easy joy of a celebration. Grace, sitting just a few chairs away, blushed prettily and gave this little modest nod, her eyes shining with embarrassment or humility. It was hard to tell. She looked so sweet, so innocent, like the perfect new daughter. I just sat there, motionless, trying to keep my face from cracking. It was as if I'd suddenly become invisible, erased from my own story. I could barely move, barely manage a brittle smile for the people watching me. No one seemed to notice. All eyes were on Grace. Let me rewind for a second. I'm Anna Clark. I turned 30 a few months ago, a milestone that felt significant, though less now, in the wake of everything. Until recently, I would have told you my mother and I were close. Not just close in the way some people mean, but really close. We had our routines, our silly private jokes, our Sunday movie marathons with way too much popcorn, our long walks with coffee where we'd talk about everything and nothing. She was the person I called first with good news or bad. We had a shorthand, a bond I thought was unbreakable. And then she started seeing Mark. At first I was happy for her. She seemed lighter, more hopeful. But that was also when things started to shift. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began pulling away, slipping out of our rituals, skipping our movie nights, forgetting our little traditions. Mark's daughter, Grace, became a regular fixture. Grace is younger, barely 23, I think. Prettier in that effortless way. Smart, poised, always saying the right thing. She's the sort of person people can't help but like. Or at least that's how my mother treats her. Suddenly, Grace was everywhere. At dinners, family outings, even during our supposedly sacred coffee dates. Sometimes it felt like I was being replaced, piece by piece. This wedding was meant to be my moment to get back what we'd lost. When Mom asked me to plan it, I thought it was her way of saying she still needed me, that I still mattered. I threw myself into the details with a kind of desperate hope. The venue, the flowers, every last thing. I researched, negotiated, paid deposits. I even covered a lot of the costs myself, draining my savings because I wanted everything to be perfect for her. She insisted that it all be kept a secret. She wanted the magic of a big reveal, she said. So I kept quiet. Didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friends, what I was doing. I told myself it would be worth it, that when she saw it all come together, she'd remember how much I loved her. But now, here I am, watching her shower Grace with praise, acting like she doesn't even see me. The months leading up to the wedding were pure madness. Every day was a blur of stress and exhaustion. I was juggling spreadsheets, fielding endless calls with vendors who never seemed to get anything right, writing and rewriting emails deep into the night. All the while, Mom stayed out of it. She made it clear from the beginning. "Anna, I don't want to get wrapped up in all the stress," she said one morning over coffee, her tone gentle but final. "You're so much better at this stuff. Just surprise me, okay? I know you'll make it perfect." I told myself it was trust, that she believed in me. But it also felt like she was distancing herself, like she didn't really care enough to be involved. She never asked how things were going, never wanted updates, never even mentioned what she wanted for the flowers or the food or the dress code. I filled in the blanks myself, guessing at what would make her happy. I threw myself even harder into the planning, convinced this was my chance to bring us back together. If I could just make everything beautiful enough, seamless enough, maybe she'd see me again. What I didn't realize, what only became sickeningly clear at the 11th hour, was that Grace was telling Mom an entirely different story. While I was working myself ragged, Grace was quietly taking credit for the whole thing. My mother thought Grace was the mastermind, the one orchestrating every magical detail. That's why she never came to me with questions. She thought Grace was handling it all. It seems so obvious now, but at the time, I was just too overwhelmed, too hopeful, too blinded by my need to believe my mother still valued me. I never thought to question why she was so distant. I just assumed she wanted me to take the reins. I never imagined she thought someone else was in charge. There's one moment I keep coming back to. A few weeks before the wedding, I was in the kitchen, surrounded by scraps of paper and half-finished seating charts, making notes for the guest list. I heard Mom and Grace talking in the living room. Their voices floated in, just loud enough to catch. "Oh, Grace, you've been such a lifesaver with all this wedding planning," Mom was saying, her voice soft and full of warmth. "I honestly don't know how I'd have managed without you." I could hear the affection in her tone, the pride. Grace laughed, this gentle musical sound that made me wince. "It's nothing, really," she said, all false modesty. "I just want your day to be perfect. You deserve it." I froze, my pen poised above the paper. What was Mom talking about? Grace hadn't done a single thing that I'd seen. She'd barely even shown up for the cake tasting. Before I could wrap my head around it, Mom's voice dropped, even softer, almost conspiratorial. "I'm so lucky to have a stepdaughter like you. You're such a natural at this. I thought Anna was handling it, but you're probably much better than her." I felt like I'd been slapped. I just stood there, my heart pounding, the words echoing in my mind. I wanted to march into the living room and demand an explanation, to ask why she was saying those things, but I didn't. I stood there in the kitchen, holding my breath, telling myself maybe Mom was just trying to make Grace feel included. Maybe Grace had helped with something small I hadn't noticed. I tried to let it go, to focus on the mountain of work I still had to do. I told myself I was being paranoid. But now, sitting here at the reception, the truth is impossible to ignore. Grace had woven her story, and Mom had believed it completely. There were no questions, no doubts, just a new narrative with me written out of it. The weeks before the wedding nearly broke me. I barely slept, living off coffee and adrenaline. My world shrinking down to a series of endless tasks. Color-coding the seating chart, chasing down vendors who kept messing up the orders, hand-folding ribbons for every single chair, tracking down substitutes for the out-of-season flowers Mom wanted. When the venue double-booked us with a corporate event, I fought tooth and nail to get our date back, even paying more just to keep the space. I organized tastings and menu changes to match exactly what Mom liked, right down to the salad dressing. I spent hours on the tiniest details, sweating over every decision, because I wanted her to have the perfect day. I wanted her to look at me and remember what we had, to see me as the daughter who still mattered. I did all of it, every painstaking, stressful, expensive detail. And in the end, it was Grace who got the toast, Grace who got the credit, Grace who got the smile. I tried to hold my head high, tried to remind myself that I knew the truth, but it felt hollow. I looked around at the crowd, people who would never know what I'd done, or how hard I'd worked for a scrap of my mother's attention. I wondered if she would ever know, or if I would just keep fading out, a little more invisible every day, while someone else took my place. I designed the invitations myself to save money, spending hours hunched over the kitchen table, surrounded by colored pens and scraps of cardstock. Each swirl of calligraphy, every carefully glued embellishment, was a commitment, a silent promise to make Mom's big day as unforgettable as she dreamed. I'd done it all in secret, just like she asked. "I want it to be a surprise," she'd whispered one night, eyes shining with excitement. And so I became invisible, hiding my handiwork in drawers, crafting after midnight, skipping meals and foregoing sleep to make sure no one saw. Somehow, in the flurry of it all, the excitement of surprising her dulled under the weight of exhaustion. My savings dwindled until my wallet was nearly empty, but I kept telling myself it would all be worth it, that her smile would be payment enough. But now, sitting quietly at the reception hall, lost in the sea of clinking glasses and laughter, the truth settled heavy in my chest. I'd been invisible from the very beginning. All the work, all the secret late nights, all the things I'd sacrificed, none of it seemed to matter. I watched as guests drifted past with compliments for others, laughter swirling around me like smoke. Maybe, I thought, this is just how things are meant to be. Maybe my role was to stay in the shadows. Suddenly, a sharp clink echoed through the room as a fork tapped a champagne glass. Conversation tapered off, and every head turned to the head table. There stood Mom, radiant in her dress, glass lifted high, cheeks aglow with happiness. For a heartbeat, our eyes met, and I felt a flicker of hope. The room stilled in anticipation. "I just want to thank everyone for being here today," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "This day has been a dream come true, and I'm so grateful to share it with all of you." She looked around, her gaze grazing over me for the briefest moment before moving on. I waited, breath caught, for some acknowledgement, a nod, a word, anything. She continued. "Planning a wedding isn't easy, and I have to admit, I wasn't involved in much of it. But thankfully, I had someone who stepped in and made this day as perfect as it is." My heart raced. I sat up a little straighter, anticipation building behind my ribs. Maybe she did see, maybe she did know. But then she smiled at Grace, and the world shifted under me. "Grace," Mom said, her voice brimming with pride. "You've been my rock through this whole process. You've been there every step of the way, making sure every detail was perfect. I couldn't have done this without you." The applause was thunderous, the kind that echoed off the walls and lingered long after the last hand fell still. People turned in their seats to beam at Grace, whose expression was the picture of modesty and triumph. She waved, basking in the attention, her eyes sliding over to me with a sly, almost pitying smile. I felt my cheeks burn. Every clap felt like an accusation, a reminder that my efforts were invisible, that my presence was irrelevant. Mom's voice wavered. "I'm so lucky to have you as my stepdaughter. You've made this day magical, and I'll never forget it." The applause surged again, louder, more insistent. I blinked back tears, my hands frozen in my lap, heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. I forced myself to clap along, the sound hollow, my movements robotic. Grace kept her eyes fixed on me, her smile curling just enough to let me know she saw my pain and relished it. I clenched my fists beneath the table, nails digging into my palms, willing myself not to cry. It was Mom's day after all. This was supposed to be her moment of joy, not my scene of collapse. So I swallowed my pride, smoothed the mask back over my face, and faded further into the background. I spent the rest of the night moving like a ghost through the celebration, offering polite smiles, making small talk, waiting for the evening to finally end. Every time someone praised Grace's hard work, I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. I counted the minutes until I could leave, until I could finally be alone with my disappointment. A week passed in a blur. Mom left for her honeymoon, and the house was filled with silence. The anger simmered, mingling with hurt and confusion. I replayed every moment, every slight, every word. By the time she returned, I could no longer contain it. I found her in her living room, suitcase half unpacked, souvenirs scattered around her. She looked younger, happier, her skin sun-kissed and eyes bright from her travels. For a moment I hesitated, not wanting to tarnish her joy. But the words burned inside me. "Mom," I said, my voice harsh. "We need to talk." She looked up, her smile fading into a frown. "What is it, Anna? You don't look happy to see me." I crossed my arms, steeling myself. The words tumbled out, harsher than I intended. "What the heck was that at the wedding? I was the one who did everything for you, and you gave all the credit to Grace. She didn't do a single thing, Mom. Not a single thing." Her face shifted, her eyes narrowing. "Anna," she said coldly, "I don't know what's gotten into you, but this jealousy of Grace is unbecoming. She worked so hard to make that day special for me. She actually cared." The accusation stung. "Jealousy? Mom, I'm not jealous. Grace lied to you. She didn't plan anything. Every flower, every table setting, every vendor, that was me. I spent months making it perfect for you." She laughed, but there was no joy in it, just disbelief and disappointment. "Stop it, Anna. I asked you to do the planning, but you clearly didn't care enough to follow through. Grace stepped in because she knew how important this was to me. She made it perfect, not you." It was like the ground opened beneath me. I felt small, insignificant, like a child again. "She lied to you, Mom. She took credit for everything I did and you just believed her. You never even asked me what I'd done. Not once." Mom crossed her arms, her jaw set. "Grace wouldn't lie to me. You're just upset because she outshone you. Frankly, that's your problem to deal with, not mine." Her words felt like a slap. All the years I'd spent trying to make her proud, all the time I'd spent trying to be seen, crashed down around me. I fought the tears, but they came anyway, streaming hot down my cheeks. I wiped them away, swallowing the lump in my throat. "You're wrong," I whispered, my voice trembling. "One day, you'll see that." But she'd already turned away, busying herself with her suitcase, shutting me out as easily as closing a door. I stood there for a moment, waiting for her to turn back, to take it all back, to see me, but she didn't. The silence stretched between us, cold and final. I left her house feeling smaller than ever. I walked home in the dusk, the sky heavy and gray, replaying our conversation over and over. For the first time, I wondered if I would always be invisible to her, no matter how hard I tried. I realized that sometimes love isn't enough to make someone see you. Sometimes, no matter how much you give, you're still left waiting in the shadows, hoping for a recognition that may never come. She waved me off like I was nothing, her dismissive gesture cutting deeper than I wanted to admit. "I think you should leave, Anna. I'm not going to stand here and listen to you talk about Grace like that." Her words stung, final and cold. So I left, the ache in my chest making it hard to breathe. The door slammed behind me, reverberating down the hall, even though I hadn't meant to make a scene. That blind loyalty, God, it hurt so much more than I expected. She picked Grace's lie over my truth without hesitation. How was I supposed to fix that? Was it even possible to repair something so fundamentally broken? When the person you love most refuses to see you? The next day, I tried to focus on anything else. Anything that would push down the raw anger and betrayal clawing at me. But it was impossible. Every time I thought I'd managed to bury it, the memory surged up, hotter and sharper than before, until finally I couldn't stand another minute of pretending. I did what I'd been dreading for weeks. I went to Grace's apartment. My heart hammered as I stood outside her door, rehearsing what I'd say, though every version in my head sounded too weak or too angry. When she opened the door, it was as if she'd been expecting me. Her fake sweet smile was already in place, her eyes bright and calculating, like she hadn't just wrecked my life and then strolled away without a second thought. "Anna," she chirped, leaning lazily on the doorframe, as if this was all a friendly surprise. "What a surprise. What brings you here?" I dug my fingernails into my palms, willing myself to keep calm, to not let her see how much she'd gotten under my skin. "We need to talk," I said, and to my own surprise, my voice sounded steady and even. Inside, though, I was a storm. "Sure, come on in," she replied, syrupy and bright, stepping aside as if she owned the place, and maybe she did in a way. I walked into her living room, everything in its perfect place, the air oppressive with her candy-sweet perfume. I didn't bother with polite conversation. I spun around to face her, the words tumbling out. "What the hell, Grace? Why did you tell my mom you planned her wedding?" Her smile didn't falter, but I saw a glint of something in her eyes. Guilt, or maybe just irritation at being confronted. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said with that practiced innocence, her eyes wide as if butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. "Don't play dumb," I snapped, my voice rising despite my efforts to keep it level. "You told her you planned everything. You let her believe you did all the work when it was me. Do you have any idea how much time I put in? How much I gave up to make it perfect for her?" She laughed, a light, dismissive sound, tucking a lock of hair behind her ear like she was bored. "Anna, I never said that." She just assumed I was helping. I didn't think it was a big deal, so I didn't say anything. I stared at her, disbelief and anger surging in my veins. "Didn't say anything? You sat there at the reception, soaking up all the praise, letting her ignore me like I was invisible." She crossed her arms, her whole posture shifting, her smile curdling into something smug and satisfied. "It's not my fault she believes in me more than you," she said, voice cool and sharp. "Maybe if you'd actually told her what you were doing, this wouldn't have happened." Her words landed like a punch, knocking the air out of me. I stepped closer, my voice trembling with fury. "You're unbelievable. You knew exactly what you were doing. You didn't care about the truth or about me. All you wanted was the attention." Grace just shrugged, unbothered, her eyes glinting. "If it matters so much, talk to her yourself. It's not my fault if she thinks I'm better at this than you." I looked at her, barely able to believe the coldness in her voice, the way she twisted everything to her advantage. "You're pathetic, Grace," I said, my voice low and shaking. "And one way or another, the truth's going to come out. Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts." I didn't wait for her to respond. I turned and walked out, my head high but my heart pounding. The door slammed behind me, echoing my anger and pain. For a moment, I just stood in the hallway, chest heaving, trying to collect myself. Anger, hurt, and, somewhere beneath it all, a flicker of hope. I was done letting her take what was mine. The truth was on my side, and I was going to make sure people saw it. Grace's birthday arrived a few days later. I spent the morning pacing in my apartment, every hour that passed feeding the resentment inside me. There was no invitation for me, of course. My brother had mentioned that it would be a big party. Grace's friends, her boyfriend Liam, even Mom and the rest of the family would be there. All of them ready to celebrate the girl who could do no wrong. The thought of them laughing and fawning over her, handing her the credit for my work, made me sick. On my kitchen table was a folder I'd been keeping for months, full of receipts, emails, texts, every scrap of proof that I was the one who planned and paid for Mom's wedding. It wasn't just about the recognition anymore. Grace's lies had stolen my work, my relationship with Mom, even my sense of self-worth. As I stared at the evidence, something hardened inside me. I'd had enough. I grabbed the folder, threw on my coat, and headed out the door before I could talk myself out of it. I had no grand plan, no clever speech, just the certainty that I couldn't keep living in Grace's shadow. I deserved to be seen. When I reached Grace's apartment, the party was already loud and bright, laughter and music spilling out into the hallway. My hands shook as I stood outside, folder pressed to my chest, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. I took a deep breath, bracing myself, and knocked. The noise inside fell away, replaced by an uneasy hush. Grace answered the door, her party smile faltering the instant she saw me standing there. "Anna," she said, her voice tight, brittle. "What are you doing here?" "Crashing the party," I said, forcing my voice steady, stepping inside before she could stop me. I could feel every eye in the room on me, the sudden silence pressing in. Mom was on the couch, drink in hand, eyebrows raised. Liam stood by the cake, looking confused and awkward, as if wishing he could disappear. For a moment, I almost faltered. I could feel the weight of their judgment, the risk of making things even worse. But then I looked at Grace, saw the panic flicker across her face, and I remembered everything she'd taken from me. I wasn't there to make a scene. I was there to reclaim my truth. I straightened my shoulders, holding the folder tight, ready to finally let everyone see what Grace had worked so hard to hide. "Everyone," I started, my voice slicing through the tangle of conversation, louder than I intended, but clear and unwavering. The edges of my nerves felt raw, but I stood my ground. Sorry to interrupt, but I need to say something. Grace, just coming in, shut the door behind her with a quiet click. The noise made her flinch. She turned to face me, her face pale and tight, eyes darting for an exit that wasn't there. "Anna, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time," I shot back, refusing to let her finish, refusing to let the moment slip away. For so long I'd let myself be small, let my voice go unheard. Not now. I looked around, forcing myself to meet the anxious, uncertain glances of everyone in the room. For weeks now, I've watched someone else take credit for everything I did to plan my mom's wedding. I think it's time everybody knows the truth. A low, uneasy rumble passed through the crowd, whispers and shifting feet. I could feel the weight of their attention settle on me, heavy and expectant. My hands shook a little as I opened the folder I'd brought, but once I started, I couldn't stop. I drew out the first stack of receipts. "I was the one who booked the venue," I said, holding up the contract with my name scrawled across the bottom, proof pressed between my fingers like a shield. I hired the caterers, picked the menu, paid for every single dish that night. My hands moved with purpose now, laying out the evidence. I picked out the flowers, organized the centerpieces, coordinated the deliveries. Here's the invoice. And the email chain to prove it. As I spoke, I felt my voice steady and strengthen, fueled by something deeper than anger, a need to finally be seen. Invitations, decorations, seating arrangements, I handled everything. Not Grace. The room stilled, the air thick with disbelief. My words seemed to echo, each one falling heavy and sharp. My mother sat frozen on the edge of her seat, her mouth slightly open, eyes wide with a kind of shock I'd never seen there before. Grace stayed rooted by the door, jaw clenched so tight I thought she might shatter from the inside out. "Anna," Mom finally managed, her voice trembling. "What are you talking about?" "Grace told me." "Grace lied," I said, and turned, meeting Grace's eyes full on for the first time. I saw the panic there, the desperate hope that someone would step in and save her. "Go on, Grace. Tell everyone how you let her believe you did all the work. Tell them how you stood at the reception, soaking up the praise for things you didn't do." Grace's lips parted, but no sound came out. The silence in the room became a living thing, pressing against us all. "It's not like that," she stammered finally, voice trembling. I didn't lie, I didn't correct her. It wasn't a big deal." I felt heat rising in my face, anger mixing with a deep, years-old hurt. "Not a big deal?" My voice shook now, not with fear, but with the force of everything I'd held back. "You let me work myself to exhaustion while you stood there smiling, collecting compliments. You didn't care how that made me feel, or how it would hurt Mom if she knew." For a moment, no one moved. Then, Liam stepped forward, his face shadowed by confusion and something harder: betrayal. His voice was low, but there was a new edge to it, sharp and cold. "Grace," he said, "is this true? Did you lie about planning the wedding?" Grace looked at him, her eyes desperate, searching for comfort, for sanctuary. "Liam, I don't—" He held up a hand, cutting her off. "Just tell me the truth. I deserve that much." She looked around, as if hoping someone would defend her. But there was nothing but the silence and the truth. Her cheeks burned red, her whole body stiff. "Fine," she spat, a brittle bitterness in her tone. "Yes, okay? I didn't plan the wedding. Anna did. But does it really matter? It was just one day." The room erupted. Gasps, sharp whispers, the scrape of chairs as people shifted, glancing at each other, at me, at Grace. The air felt electrified, every emotion laid bare. Liam's face hardened. His eyes shuddered as if a door had just closed behind them. He stepped back from Grace, putting distance between them that felt final. "It matters to me," he said, voice flat and unyielding. "If you can lie about this, what else have you lied about?" He shook his head, not bothering to look at her again. "I can't do this, Grace. We're done." Grace's mouth worked soundlessly, her eyes wide with shock and a dawning horror. She didn't move, couldn't move, as Liam turned, grabbed his coat in one swift motion, and strode out the door. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the low hum of conversation starting up again, as if people needed to fill the void with something, anything. I turned to my mother. She was still sitting there, hands clenched in her lap, eyes glossy with tears she wouldn't let fall. "I tried to tell you," I said softly, but with a new steadiness. "I did everything for you, and you wouldn't listen." "Anna," she managed, her voice breaking. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I should have asked. I should have seen." "It's too late for that," I said, not cruel but resolute, the words coming easier than I expected. "I just needed you to know the truth. Now you do." I gathered my folder, my evidence, all the proof I'd needed for myself, more than anyone else, and walked out, leaving behind a room humming with shock and the beginnings of uncomfortable conversations. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight on my chest lift, felt the air come easier. I felt free in a way that was raw but real, a freedom that came not from forgiveness, but from finally claiming my own voice. A few days later, my phone buzzed, its insistent vibration cutting through the quiet of my apartment. I looked down, surprised to see Grace's dad's name, Mark, lighting up the screen. Mark never called. At family events, he was always in the background, quiet, watchful, the kind of man who measured his words carefully. I hesitated for a heartbeat, then picked up. "Hello? Anna." His deep, steady voice came through, slower than usual, as if he was carrying something heavy. "It's Mark. I hope I'm not bothering you." "No, it's fine," I replied, uncertain. The silence stretched between us, thick and meaningful. He sighed, the sound rough around the edges. "I just wanted to apologize," he said, voice thick with emotion. "For what happened, for what Grace did, for what you went through." My chest tightened, unexpected tears prickling at my eyes. "You don't have to apologize for her, Mark. You didn't do anything wrong." "I know," he said quickly, his words tumbling over each other. "But still, I feel responsible." I raised her better than that, or at least I thought I did. He paused, and I could hear the struggle in his silence. "At the party, when I heard what she'd done, taking credit for your work, I was ashamed, Anna. Deeply ashamed. You put in all that effort and she took it from you and none of us saw it happening. I can't tell you how sorry I am." I swallowed hard, caught off guard by how much his words mattered. For so long, I'd convinced myself that no one cared, that it was easier to just keep my head down and let things slide. But hearing him now, his voice rough and honest, something in me softened. "Thank you for saying that," I said quietly. "It means a lot, more than you know." "She's paying the price now," Mark said, voice low and sorrowful. "She's lost more than she realizes. I think she's starting to understand the hurt she caused, but that doesn't erase what you went through. If there's anything I can do, anything at all, just say the word." I let out a long, unsteady breath, feeling the truth in his words settle over me. "I appreciate that, Mark. Really. But the best thing you can do is talk to Grace. Help her see why this wasn't just a small mistake. Help her understand how much it hurt and why it matters." "I will," he promised, his voice clear with conviction. "I promise you, Anna, I'm so sorry for all of it." "Thank you," I replied, my voice strong now, steadied by something new, an understanding that I wasn't alone, that my pain was seen, that my truth mattered. "Thank you for calling. That means more than you know." And as I hung up, I realized that the ache inside me had shifted, not gone, but lighter, changed by the knowledge that sometimes speaking up wasn't just about setting the record straight, but about opening the door to something better. I'd lost a lot, but I'd found my voice, and for the first time, that felt like enough. After Grace's birthday, it felt like the ground shifted beneath my feet. Nothing was the same anymore. Mom started calling me almost every day, her voice tight and shaky as she apologized again and again for not believing me, for dismissing all the things I'd tried to tell her before. There was a heaviness in the air during those conversations, but also a note of real regret I'd never heard from her before. I told her I forgave her because deep down, I wanted to let go of the resentment I'd been holding on to for so long. Still, I was honest. Forgiveness didn't mean instant trust. I made it clear that it would take time for me to feel safe opening up to her again. Grace, on the other hand, all but vanished. She used to walk into a room and draw every eye, always ready with a dazzling smile or a sharp comment. But after her birthday, it was like she shrunk into herself, her presence barely a shadow. People didn't whisper and giggle around her anymore. They just looked away, or worse, watched her with pity or judgment. I heard through the grapevine that Liam had left town for good, and Grace, who'd always seemed so untouchable, was having a rough time dealing with it. There was a sadness to her I hadn't seen before, as if the world she built around herself had cracked, and she didn't know how to fix it. Oddly enough, while everything seemed to be crumbling for Grace, I felt lighter than I had in years. I realized how much energy I'd wasted trying to earn approval from people who barely noticed when I was hurting, who only saw what they wanted to see. For the first time, I started making choices for myself, not for anyone else's expectations. I picked up old hobbies I'd abandoned, let myself get lost in music and drawing again, and reached out to friends I'd drifted away from. It was awkward at first, but reconnecting with people who remembered who I was before all the drama felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater. I also learned to set boundaries, something I'd never been brave enough to do before. I stopped saying yes just to keep the peace and started protecting my own sense of calm. It wasn't easy. Sometimes guilt would creep in, or I'd worry I was being selfish. But little by little, I felt stronger and more in control of my own life. Things between Mom and me started to heal, but in a different way than I expected. Our relationship wasn't built on me constantly trying to please her anymore. She began to respect the space I needed, and we slowly found a rhythm that felt more balanced, more honest. We talked about real things, not just the surface-level stuff, and she didn't flinch when I told her what I needed. Maybe that's what trust is, learning to stand your ground and still let someone in. As for Grace, she drifted further from the center of my world. I did feel a twinge of sympathy for her sometimes, remembering how lost she looked, but mostly I let her go. We were both paying the price for choices we'd made, and maybe that was just part of growing up. The truth had come out, and even though it hurt, it cleared the air. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was finally moving forward. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally choosing my own path.